All right, we'll get this meeting of Community Infrastructure Services started. We have 7 items to deal with today. Our first 5 are consent. Does someone want to move the consent items? Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Is there any questions? Okay, we will need a motion to, is there one specifically, Councillor Gazzola, or a few?
With that water drinking summary, and one on the next one.
On, sorry?
And one on the Chicopee ski club.
Okay. Okay, we'll move those for discussion. All in favor? Opposed? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, you can go ahead on number 3 with the Region of Waterloo City of Waterloo Drinking Water Summary.
And my question is, we've been handed a very technical document here, 50 pages. Is there any summary that goes with that? Or was there, I didn't see any summary in the report, and I just, question the value of that big long report. Can someone in simple terms tell me what it's all about?
Cynthia?
Through the chair, we are meeting our regulatory requirement of giving council the drinking water quality reports for any source water that's within the city of Kitchener. I guess as summary, the reports have raised no concerns for any of our staff, but our staff wouldn't be able to speak to the details of the report because they're produced by others.
Okay, the bottom line is, for the past year, there have been no problems with our drinking water. Simple?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You can go ahead with your next question on number 4.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to what's happening with number 4. I don't disagree with what is taking place, where the Chicopee, the racing team and that are being included under the city's recreation program or what have you. I'm just curious is there an additional cost to the city for taking that on?
Bob, you're going to answer that one?
Yeah, through the chair, if it's referring to the insurance pool, there is no adjustments to premium when we affiliate a minor sport group.
Will there be any additional cost to the city? I mean, this has been going on since 1934, and we're just doing something about it now. Will there be additional cost to the city in the future?
As of right now, they'd be considered within our regular allotment and work that we do within the city. There's no additional cost foreseeable right now.
So what took it 80 years to get here?
Through the chair, we were approached by Chicopee a year and a half ago with a new direction of their programming that they want to create stronger community connections. The snow school and ski racing program actually approached the city with regards to affiliation.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with it. I thought they should have been involved with that. Now, as a result of becoming affiliated with the city, will the individuals involved be able to save any registration fees that they're now currently paying?
Through the chair, that would be within their budget processes, as we won't be, it's not our facility, so we will not be supplementing their rental fees for the facility, so to speak, or receiving any of the grant process. Hopefully, with the connections that we can help generate for them in increased registrations and other community partnerships, there will be additional revenue available where they could either sustain their fees or drop their fees.
Thank you.
Okay, so all the items have been moved by Councillor Ioannidis. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. All right, we'll now move on to item number 6, which is the noise exemption request for Ever After Music Fest at Bingaman's. There's no presentation from staff, so we'll jump right to the delegations and call forward Tony, Robert, and Gabriel. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation. Welcome.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Robert Matticoni. I'm with Beyond Oz, and we're here to discuss the noise exemption plan for this coming year. And what we did was take the liberty of going through the experience from last year and trying to highlight some of the significant differences for this year's event in recognizing that there were some noise issues and concerns from the residents and the community itself. So if we look at 2015 festival results, we were made aware that there were 57 total noise complaints. The majority of the complaints were in the downtown area, and the complaints themselves were within the envelope of the speaker orientation or the stage orientation. The furthest point that we were made aware of in respects to a complaint was at Sunrise Shopping Center. Now, I'll draw your attention to it's more of a visual so you can see the orientation of the stage, and the arrows reflect the envelope of sound. Okay? As you can see, it's all towards the downtown area, just the simple orientation of the stage itself. And that's extrapolated over a further distance, so we can appreciate the magnitude of what was experienced through the community, with the longest arrow being Sunrise. Now, the reasons for some of the issues that we encountered. I identified stage orientation. Whoever's not familiar with Bingaman's, there's essentially a hill. It's within a valley. It's a bowl effect. And last year, the sound carried right up the hill, and it propelled over top of the hill, creating an extra push to the noise itself. There was a severe experience of hard surface resonance, and what that means is the city itself, the buildings within the city, the hard structures, were essentially creating points of refraction so that the sound carried much, much further. And then there was the anomaly to last year's weather conditions. We experienced very unusual wind circumstance. Typically, for the region, the wind comes down from the north and pushes towards the east. On those 3 days, it came down from the north, those 2 days, and pushed westward. So it accelerated the travel of the bass. And the bass is really the sound that we're most concerned with. It's the lower frequencies. On top of that, we experienced temperatures that were generally 10 degrees below the norm over a 20-year cycle. So that sound, that low-frequency sound, tends to carry much, much more effectively in colder conditions. The temperatures were closer to zero than they were even to 10 degrees. The other factor was something called a line array, and that's the speakers that hang from the stage itself. They're made in a parabolic fashion, but they were suspended vertically at a 90-degree angle. And that was because we wanted to have the crowd at the very back feel the effect of that sound equal to the crowd at the very front. The other noticeable difference to this year, and I'll go through it on the next slides, is the actual bass placement of the speakers themselves. They were in a cluster format. Okay? So now we'll move to the improvements. So we've reoriented the stage, and I'll show you that through some photographs that we have. They no longer point towards residential areas. We've eliminated the second stage, and we've gone to a one-stage platform. We've utilized the actual grounds as a dampening system, so the trees will effectively create dampening to the bass and other sounds that carry because of the orientation of the stage. And then we've been able to adjust the angles of the line array so that the sound is more focused in a smaller area by way of utilizing, number one, the angle of the line array, and number two, a repeating system at the house, which the house sits back about 125 feet from the main stage. We've used soft backdrops behind the bass speakers to absorb some of that sound. And in that way, we've been able to minimize hard surface resonance. We're hoping that the move of a week, we've moved the date 1 week into June as opposed to where we were last year, that we're mitigating the chances of a bad weather condition. So this is if we were to look at a pictorial of the stage and what a cluster looks like, as identified, the base all in one centered area creates, it's hard to see, but there's a discoloration of blue, and that's very round, and it just emits outwardly we call it a non-directional fashion, but it's really omnidirectional. That's what we're going to do this year. So it's a lot more focused, so there's less to the sides and less loss that way, and this is pointed towards an entire tree structure there. The line array, just to get technical, I've attached this. You can see the angle to the top right. That's how you angle it so that you concentrate the actual line. And that array deals with mid frequencies and high frequencies. That's the actual site and its orientation for this year. So you can see how it's significantly different than last year. That is the actual sound envelope that you're seeing. The green is the widest and the furthest points that the base will carry. And you see that the trees start to act as a mitigating sound buffer. If we were to extrapolate what we experienced last year on an exact basis, that's where it would end up this year. So assuming everything the same as last year, conditions the same, weather the same, trees have no effect, absolutely the same circumstance, that's our worst case scenario right there. It's the furthest point is in farmland, and I believe that that's not Kitchener. So I think that the community this year will experience much less grief as it relates to any of the noise and the bass in particular.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. We have a couple questions for you. Councillor Marsh.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for coming in. A couple questions for you. So first of all, did you realize that the arrows indicating where the range of where the complaints stemmed from, it's not particularly accurate. Like, there were several beyond the expressway, not just at Sunrise, but in the ward that I represent near the downtown.
Yes.
Okay. So, just wondering, have you ever considered changing this event to be a headphone dance, where there'd be no sound to the community?
It's from our perspective, it's the headphone application has been typically used in the genre itself as something that occurs post midnight, more into the late hours. The sound that you get from a headphone is significantly different than one that you get in that open environment, and really that's what you're really trying to create with an open space festival. You're trying to really have an experience, be part of the event itself, right? And that for us is a very important thing, so that the patrons themselves have a freedom, and the sounds, the ambience, the sounds that are generated not just from the music, but from where they actually are, everything else around them, everything integrates to create what is the experience of an EDM festival.
I'm not sure if they could hear anything beyond. Could they hear anything other than the music? If they're that close to the.
It actually was funny. Last year I was there, obviously, and there's certain artists that have, let's say, a style that propagates more to the what we consider noise. I'm 48 years old, so this is not exactly my genre of music, and they're bass-heavy artists. So at around 4:00 in the afternoon is when some of these guys started to come on, and what you felt more than anything, as opposed to noise, was the vibrations. And so the bass did that. But in terms of the experience there, being there myself, you did experience a lot of the ambient sounds. And that's the one thing that we, were cognizant of, that really what a lot of the residents may have been experiencing and complaining about was not just maybe the sound, but it was really the vibration. It was what the bass was causing, windows to rattle and things like that. So it's less a noise and sound issue as much as it's a frequency. The lower frequencies tend to do that.
So are you going to be changing? By the way, great presentation. You have a lot of details here. I didn't notice, maybe I missed it, anything about the bass and the frequency. Are you going to be decreasing the effect of that?
Of the bass? Yes, most definitely. And one of the slides was a cluster formation. So when you're setting up your speakers, The bass speakers all stay low. They go to the ground. The arrays hang, right? And those ones people very rarely get impacted by outside of the listening crowd. But those bass speakers are the ones that everybody's concerned about. And there's a multitude of ways to arranging those speakers. When you arrange them in a cluster, when they're all very close together,
Okay, yep, the
it
black,
creates that
ones.
effect.
Yep, okay. And so you had a lot of data, a lot of technical information today. Was it not, were you not able to anticipate some of the problems that arose from last year's festival before it happened? And could you not have mitigated them back then?
In hindsight, there were probably some things we could have anticipated, but there were also some things that were a very, very unusual circumstance.
I get it that it was colder and
The
that it was
weather
windier. That's
itself.
fine. But certainly the way that the speakers were set up could have been different to avoid this. And so maybe there will be additional things that will happen this time that you could anticipate. But that really, I'm just concerned
for
that
sure.
this time we're going to have another problem.
I don't think so, because what we've tried to address and where we were short-sighted last year, partly because of time in preparation for the event, was the venue itself. Okay, we were not totally understanding the sensitivity of the venue and how the venue accelerates and creates more compromising issues to sound. So last year, the only place to put the stage, for safety reasons, for a bunch of reasons, was where we put it. But that was probably the worst place you could put the stage. And all the experiences at Bingaman's typically identified stages and things like that in that direction, exactly the way we oriented. So this year, with the help of Mark Bingaman, we did some things to the site itself. We repaved certain areas so that we could reorient, so that the hill loses its effect. The hill was a massive, massive problem. Because if you can contain the sound below the height of the hill, there's no sound that carries outside of that. But that hill, because of its very nature and structure, just created a ramp for all sound to carry. So we had to find a way to deal with that hill. And what we finally rested upon was limiting the size of the potential patron availability to the actual event by reorienting the site. That reorientation limits, if not totally negates, any sounds up the hill. And it allows us to have maybe, a few less people on the event in terms of its legal capacity, just because of the shape of the event takes. But it does definitely address the sound issue, and it was done exclusively for that purpose.
Okay. And last question. So are you aware of any complaints from outside of Kitchener, like on the other side of Grand River, for example, Bloomingdale area?
We were not made aware of any complaints outside of Kitchener.
Okay, I'll maybe have questions of staff after that. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Davey?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It definitely shows you're taking the concerns that we have very seriously. A couple questions. First, I just wanted to see if I could understand the bass is obviously the largest issue. And you mentioned behind the bass, I think you said, you used the word soft backdrop or something like that. Could you explain that?
Yeah, there's because of the positioning of the actual speakers, they're put just in front of the main stage. So we've spread them out first and foremost, and then we're using a scrim type of product. It absorbs the sound, and we have NRG here with us tonight, or this afternoon rather. And on a technical level, there's also a negative minimizing structure that's being implemented. It's a form of technology that negates the sound actually traveling backwards and creating any resonance anyways.
Okay, so even though the subs are faced out, it absorbs any sound that's from backwards. Okay,
that's right.
Like my fellow councillor, I acknowledge the work that you've done and how you've worked with staff in coming to these arrangements, but still, a lot of it's very much in theory. So, supposing that we go ahead with this, and after the first night, for whatever reason, it doesn't work, and I'm looking at the last clause here on the decibel, like the only thing that I think we can materially change is the decibel level. Supposing that we are getting similar complaints to last year, would you be open to possibly lowering that decibel level for the subsequent evenings?
For sure. We did that last year. And I was directly involved with one of the officers, the bylaw officers last year, and we effectively reduced the noise output by the end of the night on the Sunday, almost 50%. So, there is the ability to monitor that dB rating and in turn lower it when the necessity arrives. But moreover, I think that, with all due respect, the community being aware that 110 decibels and what that means, or 105, or whatever the acceptable decibel level is, and there's going to be, assuming negative weather again, assuming things like that, there will be residents that are aware of the sound and the event that's going on. Just managing that expectation, I think, is of utmost importance. And if calls do start to come in, we have the ability for council members, for bylaw officers alike, to actually see a live, let's say, tracking of the decibel levels, so that we can see that we are maintaining what is expected of us. And we will make small adjustments when we can. The setup allows for that as well, because we're intending to put a repeating system. And that repeating system allows a little less focus from the main stage, and then a touch of a delay from the house, so that we can control the sound a little bit better as well.
Okay. And to be clear as well, I shall mention this in my comments, but and I guess the last part of that then, it's sort of tied into the decibel, and I appreciate your being flexible on that should the need arise. The majority of Bingaman's is actually in the ward that I represent, and the majority of the complaints I had actually were from the Sunday evening, because there was kids that were kept up late and going the next day. So that's my primary concern. Is there any possibility of ending, from within your business model, of ending earlier or committing to greatly reducing that decibel threshold past, say, 9 p.m. at night on the Sunday only?
It would be next to impossible for two reasons. Number one, the lineup is established and static. And number two, the closer, the last artist is typically your big gun. And he's the one that, is more sensitive than any others to production. And so those levels are important to maintaining what he's about and the message that he's trying to send.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Verbanovic?
Thank you, and thanks for coming in. Just as a follow-up to that question, though, it seems a little strange that sort of on a two-night concert, because, people also have to go to work the next day that are attending the concert, that you wouldn't sort of have your main acts on the Saturday versus the Sunday? Is that the norm in your business, or? Very
much so, because of its nature. And this year's actually Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night. The last night is really the closing night, the night where the most popular artist comes in and closes the festival, especially in a festival application.
Is it partially because the main act is perhaps working larger centers nearby, as opposed to, and then coming here because it's a smaller center, and therefore we have to deal with it then?
No. I can tell you quite specifically that all the headliners, as we refer to them, they have actual radius clauses in their contracts that negate them from working anywhere in Southern Ontario. So this is a high-draw event. These artists are artists that work in festivals in Europe with 400,000, 500,000, 1 million people. So it's taken seriously from their perspective. And as a business practice, we do not engage with artists that are going to mitigate the effect of their presence by playing elsewhere.
So I guess, and I don't know if this is a question for you or maybe better for our staff, if council were inclined to see an earlier ending time on Sunday, I guess from your perspective, it would create some challenges for you. I guess we would have to ask, and maybe this is a legal question more than anything, do we have the ability to regulate that? And what are the implications of it?
I think if we can, we'll give you some time to think about that, and we can come back to that. I just want to finish up questions of the delegation first.
Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that has questions of the delegation? I have just one then, because are you also the one who's applied for the Midway noise exemption?
Yes.
So Sunday is a concern, and appreciating what you've said so far around the actual festival itself. If we were inclined to decrease the hours of noise coming out of the midway on the Sunday, would you be more amenable to that than the festival itself?
Yeah, in terms of the midway, our intention, and to be perfectly candid with you, I can't imagine very many people are going to be on the midway the last half hour of the night, considering really the focus. The headliner comes in on at 9:30 at night, so the real escalation of his performance occurs in the last half hour, 45 minutes. So that crowd, I don't imagine, wants to be on rides. They want to be in the crowd. They want to be feeling the energy.
So if we were inclined to compromise, would you be willing to look at a 9:30 for just music? I'm not noise coming from the midway versus shutting down the midway. Would that be something you'd be willing to agree with?
Sure. There's really no music coming from the midway, from my understanding.
Okay. That's all the questions we have for you. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
So we'll turn to staff to answer Mayor Verbanovic's question, and then we'll open up to the rest of committee to ask questions of staff. So who wants to tackle the first question from the mayor?
I can.
Jennifer?
Council does have the ability to determine the parameters of the exemption that they put in place. So the exemption could end at 9:30 on Sunday. And if the noise bylaw is violated after that point, it would be left to staff to enforce that bylaw.
Did you have anything you wanted to add to? Okay.
Another option to consider, if that's a concern for future years, is to put the people on notice this year that in future, council will perhaps be doing that so that they can plan things accordingly for subsequent years.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Davey, you have questions of staff?
Yes. And again, I really appreciate the work that's been put into this. It's a tremendous amount of work, and I think the concerns are being addressed largely. The concern I have is that, again, as I mentioned to the delegation, it's experimental. Is there an opportunity then between now and this is being ratified in 2 weeks, I guess, at council, to look at a reactive approach? Because I don't want to make comments, but there's no other way to say it. But supposing that everything works out perfectly and there's a reasonable amount of sound to come out of the festival, and there's a few complaints coming out the Friday and the Saturday, I have no concerns with them going to 11 p.m. on the Sunday. Should the opposite be the case, is there an ability to rework some of this so that we can sort of change the parameters for the final evening?
Through the chair, part of my recommendations were to include a paid duty noise officer that would be available for the entire time of the music festival. And the rationale behind that was that we have had an acoustical engineering company put together some data for us in terms of what some prescribed decibel levels would be that would work within a neighborhood and should not cause the types of issues that we experienced last year. So if we had a paid duty noise officer that would be paid by the production company available to respond to any of those complaints and proactively be within those residential areas taking those noise reads to ensure that they're staying within those limits. I think that would work with us, and also having one of their staff available to us to be in contact continuously.
Okay, but what I'm not clear on is, so right now the way the recommendation is written is all the paid noise duty officer can do is say, are they at 65 decibels at 100 meters, yes or no? And supposing that they are at that threshold or under, and we're still having very clear, loud sound with windows and doors closed inside homes elsewhere in the community, we wouldn't be able to change it under this recommendation. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ioannidis.
My question is to, thanks, Madam Chair. My question is to, I guess, maybe special events and with regards to if types of restrictions that let's say we do enhance restrictions on ever after this group, what would that be the repercussions for other events in the community?
Jeff?
Through the chair, just looking over the list right now, there's a number of events. Although we're talking about Ever After going till 11 o'clock, there are a number of events that happen throughout the city that are both city-owned events and third-party events, like a blues festival, Rib Fest, a Canada Day, even New Year's Eve, depending when they fall, that would go to 10 or 11 o'clock at night. So depending on the restrictions that we do put on, it would affect not just, say, an Ever After music festival in this case, but every other event that goes on or, potentially goes on in the future. Big Music Fest, as an example from last year, their noise exemption went until 11 o'clock as well. So if we started to reduce that, as the group had mentioned, the headline acts typically do come on later, obviously closing out the show. That was the case with Big Music Fest, an event that we were very involved with. It'll be the same case with Canada Day in a few years when it does hit on a Sunday. So it would trickle down to a number of events.
Okay. Thank you. My other question is, compared to other events, typically what kind of noise complaints do we receive from other events?
Gloria?
Through the chair, this was probably the highest amount of complaints that we've received to date for a music-type festival. I'm not aware of any others that have been quite this high.
Okay, so this was significant then?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mayor Verbanovic?
Thank you. My question has to do with the fine. So right now, if I read the report correctly, there is no set fine, correctly? But so we would have to simply go to court, and then the courts would initiate a fine up to $10,000. I just want to make sure that that is in fact the case.
The set fine is in place if a ticket is issued for a more serious type of violation, which this would likely qualify as. Court staff would likely initiate a Part 3 charge where the person has to attend court. And then, as you said, it's up to the Justice of the Peace, with the maximum being $10,000 per charge.
And so the ticket then, remind me, is?
When you receive a ticket, it's a $300 total fine, and the person has the opportunity to pay that out of court without attending court.
Okay. And, that's all I'm going to ask here.
Councillor Etherington?
Just one quick question through you, Madam Chair, to staff. The noise control methods that we just discussed for this particular event, could those be used, or are they used in downtown events on our list where there are occasional complaints? Not as many as this, but I do get complaints.
I'd like to try and stick to the one that we're dealing with, and that could be a question maybe we can ask offline moving forward.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Marsh?
Thank you. Just to follow up with the question I had about, were there any complaints that staff is aware of from outside of the city of Kitchener?
Gloria?
Through the chair, the furthest complaint we received was down in, what was it? Sunrise Center, and then down Bridgeport. But nothing that came to our attention from outside of the city parameters.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
I'm pretty close to the city border past Sunrise from where this would fly, and I can say I knew it was happening, but it wasn't anything to complain about. But I could hear it, and I'm pretty much on the boundary of the city. Councillor Davey, another question, staff?
No, actually, I was going to make a recommendation. Is there other questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
No, there's no more questions.
So I think I'm going to move deferral on this item, and I want to be clear as to why. I want this event to be successful, and I want to work with the organizers. Are clearly working with us, and I want that to go both ways. Having said that, and I think the residents are reasonable as well. I think the level of reasonability here is that if you're at home and your doors and windows are closed, that you can sleep, especially on the Sunday night when there's work and school the next day. So while I am very happy to see these measures in place, it's still experimental at this point. So the reason for the deferral is I'm gonna want to do one of two things come council on Monday, and I want staff to work with the promoters in the interim, and that is either work on some sort of reactive model where the 65 decibel may or may not be the appropriate amount of volume, especially for the Sunday evening. Or the only other alternative I can see would be to end the noise bylaw at 9:30, and then the promoter would take the risk in terms of violating the noise bylaw at that time. I think that's the only reasonable solution, and I hope council would support.
So you're moving deferral until May 16th, which is when we would deal with it for the last time, anyways. And in doing so, are you moving both the noise exemption and the midway? Okay. Does anybody have any comments around timing? Councillor Fernandez?
I'd just be curious to know how that would affect the event organizer. I mean, that means that they wouldn't have any firm decision until May 16th, which is just barely 3 weeks before their event. So I would be a little bit concerned about
We're not going to
that.
have final say until May 16th anyways, because that's our council meeting to deal with both of them.
Yeah, but I mean, he can still move ahead with most of the plans. If he doesn't get a response today, I would be a little bit concerned that he wouldn't be able to move forward with some aspects of his event. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a question that Councillor Davies should be asking the promoter.
Yeah. And that's why I made it as clear as I could that I would be making one of the two amendments. I intend to approve it with either the reactive decibel, if staff can work in a reactive decibel situation, or amending to end the Sunday at 9:30. So they can work under those parameters, and again, they wouldn't have final approval until the 16th at any rate. If other members of committee would like to voice their concern, I assume everyone else would approve, but if you want to give them that certainty, that's your prerogative.
Yeah. I guess can I make a comment now, Madam Chair? Or?
I will allow it, even though we have a deferral on the floor. So go ahead.
Okay. I apologize for not seeing the presentation. I'm sure that would have been critical to my thoughts around this. I know that we push and push and push for events and festivals around the city, and we just heard from Mr. Young that putting a parameter of time frame on this festival, it really would affect other festivals that we have within the city. I'm just concerned that we're we have an event planner here, thousands of people coming into the community, economic benefit we always hear about, and now we're making it really difficult for him to have this event. I'm just a little bit concerned.
Go ahead, point of clarification.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that in relation to other events, and I apologize if this is a question to staff, but how many other of the noise exemptions have people going to school and work the following day?
I think Mr. Young answered some of that there are some, especially the ones that don't necessarily just fall on weekends when we're dealing with Canada Day and
Right.
New Year's and things like that. So there are some that this will end up possibly changing rules there. For me, this one has generated the most complaints from our bylaw department, and so I think we do need to take the time to just take a look at it. We wouldn't be approving it until the 16th regardless, and so I think allowing the ward councillor to try and work through maybe some of these. I think we've got a lot of good things in place, and I think you, to the event organizers, have done a lot to improve the event this year and really help, but I think taking the 2 weeks isn't going to hurt anybody because the event's going to go forward regardless. It's just a matter of what rules are in place, if there are rules in place for them to have a noise exemption in a midway. So it's not moving forward until the 16th anyway. So I think anything we can do to strengthen it, both from our perspective and from the event organizer's perspective and from bylaw perspective, I think will help the event be more successful in the long run. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I was prepared to to support the recommendation is I think the organizers have done a significant amount of work in trying to do the mitigation, and I think I'll put that forward. I will support this just so they can have some comfort that I will support them. But in fairness, I do want to see if there is some kind of compromise that could come forward with some of the motion, the deferral that Councillor Davey brought forward. So I will wait till then, but I'm fully prepared to support staff's recommendation as is if in 2 weeks' time.
Okay, that's all the comments we have. We have Councillor Yansky.
So are we going forward with the recommendation before us or with a deferral?
We're going forward with deferral for both the noise exemption, and then we also were given, because the Midway was referred to this meeting as well, so they could come together. The deferral that we're dealing with is going to deal with both. So yes, it's deferral on the recommendation on page 6-1, and then you had an attached sheet that is an internal memo with regards to the Midway for the same event. Those are both being deferred by Councillor Davey. That is what we're voting on right now. Yeah. So we've had a recorded vote asked. That's all the questions that we have. It's for both Midway and noise exemption. Deferral until May 16th. Those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried. So I think, just to make one final comment to the organizers, I think we appreciate what you've done so far. We just want to see if we can strengthen it a little bit to not only help your event be successful from your standpoint, but also for the residents who may potentially be affected. So I think most of us are around the table. I get the sense that we're supportive of the direction that you're headed in, but if there's any more we can do just to strengthen that, we can do that in the next 2 weeks and move it forward. Okay, thank you so much for coming out. All right, now we are going to move on to our last item, which is the potential 2021 Canada Games bid. There's no presentation from staff, so we'll move right into the delegation, which is Sherry, the Manager of Sport Tourism, Regional Sport Tourism Office. Welcome, Sherry. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Chair Galloway Seelock, Mayor Verbenovic, members of council and staff, for the opportunity to speak today about the 2021 Canada Games and a potential bid from this region. So the Canada Games are the largest ongoing multi-sport event that takes place in Canada. The first games were started in 1967 as a centennial event to celebrate the anniversary of our nation. It's supported both federally and by all of the provincial and territorial governments as well too. It's important to note that it's a key pivotal moment for athletes in their development pathway. Over 50% of athletes that competed at Olympic Games, a Pan American or a Commonwealth Games stage have actually taken part in a Canada Games along their development. It's also a key, outside of being a major sport event, it's a key moment to celebrate culture and the community that the Games are hosted in on a national level. And it's also a major economic driver as well to the location that it has the opportunity to host. So in front of you, you see the numbers for the game. So it's approximately composed of about 3,500 athletes, an additional 1,000 coaches, technical staff, and assistants that support those athletes, 6,000 volunteers, and you can see the level of broadcast, media, medical staff, and officials that it takes to take on the organizing of the games. The number up there, the 20,000 spectators, that's an approximation. The games happen over winter and summer games, so it's important to note that the games that we're talking about in 2021 would be the summer, at an ideal time when everybody takes vacation, and it would be anticipated that we'd have very high support from families and spectators. So the sport menu for the games in 2021 is already set. It's an exercise that the Canada Games Council participated in last summer. And the key for this list is the fact that in this area, across the cities that are involved in this potential bid, we have high community capacity and minor sport participation in all of those events. The events that you see an asterisk beside are noted. Those include athletes with a disability and in some cases Special Olympic athletes as well too taking part. This chart is just an overview of the economic impact of the last 7 games. The games that you see bolded are games that took place in the summer. And it's key to note that the Canada Games Council prides itself very much on assessing the economic impact. It regularly does a STEAM assessment, which is a Sport Tourism Economic Impact Assessment. And it rates the Canada Games at the same profile level as a Grey Cup or a Memorial Cup taking place in the country. So why should we bid? Outside of the tourist benefits that we would see, we'd also see some involvement with infrastructure improvements. We'd see legacy programs, an opportunity to showcase our civic pride, an opportunity to show some collaboration across the cities, able to profile our sport infrastructure. And I want to point out, too, that when we combine the 4 cities that we're talking about for the bid, we have one of the most robust sport facility inventories in this province, if not in this country. And that's a key moving forward. So as you can see, why do we need to support a regional bid? Well, together, again, as I pointed out, we have that inventory. And key to the criteria for hosting a games by the Canada Games Council is that the Games Village footprint be within a 30-minute drive to all of the sport venues. And when we look at a combined bid, we actually meet those specifications very well. We have a very grand history of hosting prestigious sport events in this area, and we have a very strong collective of capacity in terms of volunteers and event knowledge to be able to carry on an event like this. I will add that there's the secondary benefits of the community, the cultural, the heritage, the art celebration, and also the ability to integrate with post-secondary institutions as well too. And the last point, and I'm sure everybody would be happy to see, it's the ease of transportation. We'll be able to use the LRT and our access points to the 400 series to the benefit of all those spectators and athletes and participants and volunteers coming in. So the last couple of slides really are just pointing out the process that we're undergoing in terms of making a case for a bid. So the first step is a letter of intent, and the letter of intent is due on May 20th, and that's why I stand before you at this moment in time. I have gone before 3 other cities, the City of Guelph, the City of Cambridge, and the City of Waterloo, and Council has agreed to endorse our bid moving forward. We're in the middle of working on a terms of reference for a bid committee. And we've also spoke with a lot of other stakeholders that are engaged in a project like this as well too. We have spoken with the 3 universities and the college, also the Waterloo Regional Airport and the Grand River Conservation Authority as well too, who on last Friday voted as well too at their board to move forward on the project. So the phase 1 piece after a letter of intent is submitted includes a technical review. And at the moment in time, we're collecting information on our sport inventory that we have, along with the technical specifications that are set out to host the games. And we're reviewing how our facilities match up to those technical specifications, where there may be some gaps that exist, how we can best address those gaps moving forward, and what venues then would possibly be selected to move forward as our showcased venues for our potential bid. That will be submitted at the end of June. A technical committee will review that submission, and they will make a decision whether or not we make a shortlist moving forward in September. If we're shortlisted in September, then we would have from September until January to finish the phase 2 completion. And that's really the story of why we want to host the games. It's your financial plan, it's your sponsorship, your marketing, your community engagement piece, your festival piece, and so forth. The evaluation committee would come into the area in February and do a 2 to 3 day site visit, an extensive visit. And then the final announcement for the host community will be in April of 2017. And that's all I have for you at this moment.
That's great. Thank you for your presentation. There's a few questions. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you, Sherry, for coming in and with your presentation. One couple of questions I have is, one in particular is, when you were looking at the economic impact of some of the past events, why was it on, if we can go to that slide at all, in the years 2007 and in 2009, that why is there an NA? Can you explain that for those in that region?
Certainly, through you, Madam Chair. The reason why there's an NA is it involved a larger base than a particular city area. So in the case of the Prince Edward Island Games, the games were held 1 week in Summerside and surrounding areas, and then it moved the second week to Charlottetown. So really it was a provincial scope of the games, and that's why you see that impact in that the left column being significant, and then in the region it's at NA because it was the whole area benefited from it.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. And so what method was used to calculate those impacts? Like, I know with the province they use what they call the TREM model. What was used with this?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. It's the STEAM model. So there's a TREM model and a STEAM model, which is a sport tourism economic assessment model. It's conducted through the Canadian Sport Tourism Alliance. It's very much in line with that, and it's the model that would be used to assess, for instance, the 2015 FIFA World Cup that just took place in Canada, as well as the 2015 Pan American Games. So in terms of sport tourism, it's a Canadian industry standard.
Okay, that's very good. As far as legacy programs, can you elaborate a little further what those are?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Legacy could be vast and exhaustive. Not only is it about building volunteer capacity to be able to conduct a games of this magnitude, not only by broad scope, but also by particular sport. It's an opportunity to develop sport as well, too. So you tend to see a lot of sport building take place, clinics happening, training of coaches and officials happening as well too. You really want to try to encourage athletes from this area to be striving to be on that Canada Games team, and if not on that Canada Games team, on another games to come. The other legacy piece as well too is not only in the upgrades that may happen to sport infrastructure, but it could be community infrastructure as well too. A big piece of the games is a festival opportunity as well. There's a provincial territorial program where each provincial territorial body gets to celebrate arts and entertainment, and they usually have a particular day. And I'll give an example for at the 2015 Games for Newfoundland's Day. The lead singer for Great Big Sea happened to be the feature artist of that day. So it's an opportunity for other provinces and territories to profile themselves. And it's an opportunity just to create that buzz and that legacy with the community coming together on a common project.
Okay, and my last question, and I'm sorry if I'm asking a lot of questions, but as far as you mentioned infrastructure, do you foresee a need for the municipalities at all to provide financial assistance to any of these infrastructure projects, if there is needed?
Through you, Madam Chair, there is a funding formula for the Canada Games that involves federal, provincial, and municipal level contribution. What we're working on with our regional bid is the fact that through the 4 cities working together, we almost address the needs that are required for the sport technical package very well right now through the sport infrastructure plans that each city had in place, or they've identified to have occur over the next 2 or 3 years. So there is a contribution. In some cases, it may be a project that's already been identified. And in some cases, it's through community support as well, too. So that particular sport has been earmarked, a project that they've been wanting to have completed.
Okay, thanks. So we should be pushing Cambridge to build their multiplex facility as soon as possible then. But anyways, thank you for that, for all your information. And Madam Chair, when the time's appropriate, I'm prepared to move the recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, thanks for your presentation. Very interesting and exciting numbers on the screen. I'm just puzzled because when I read an initial comment that there is no cost, the initial for the submission. And then when I read further down the page, it said a $20,000 to accompany the letter of intent. Why am I not getting it? It seems like on one hand you're saying there's no cost, and now you're saying a $20,000.
Yeah, Bob?
Yeah, through the chair. The report from staff indicates that there's no cost to the City of Kitchener. The RSTO is actually fronting the deposit and paying for the deposit themselves.
Oh, sorry. That's what I missed. Thank you. I apologize for not seeing that. You're showing us some positive economic impacts on communities. Was there a downside to this? I mean, we all get very excited when the Pan American Games come and in the Olympics, and everybody gets, excuse me, very enthusiastic and wants to support it in any way they can. But is there a downside? Do we see, gridlock with transportation? Do we not see maybe enough volunteers? Are there those sides to the story as well?
Through you, Madam Chair. It's very tough falling on the coattails of a event like the Pan American Games in Ontario. And I think sometimes we look at that and we look at some of the challenges that they were faced with, and we think that there may be an overlap with the Canada Games. I've experienced 6 Canada Games in various capacities. And I will tell you that whatever community is fortunate enough to host them, they host them with great pride, and they deal with some of those challenges. The challenges at the Canada Games are a little bit more on a lower scale. In particular, in 2021, we're talking about the end of July, the first 2 weeks of August. It tends to be downtime when everybody's taking vacation, and we'd hope that those that are taking vacation would take it either to volunteer as part of the games or to bring their families out to cheer those athletes on. It's modest. It prides itself in the fact that it's the community that's dealing with those. And it's not necessarily at such a grand scale. So, athletes, for instance, would be housed in university and college residences. So we're not talking about a higher-end preference that a high-performance athlete at a Pan American or Olympic Games would have an expectation on. So when, athletes are contained at a Games Village, it's very much within that bubble. And then they're able to go out into the community and see those opportunities. So I don't anticipate seeing the same issues that we saw on a grander scope with the Pan American Games and the Vancouver Olympics.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Netsky?
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Very enlightening, and I do have a few questions. Maybe you can help answer. The Regional Sport Museum office, is that a regional office here located, maybe part of tourism, or how does that work?
So through you, Madam Chair, the Regional Sport Tourism Office is a collaboration between Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, and Guelph. We fall under the administration of the Regional Tourism Organization 4. And sport tourism has very much been identified as a strategic priority for them. So we work in the service of the 4 cities. We do have 2 partners that are give funding contributions, the WRTMC and Visit Guelph as well too. It's very much about complementing what staff is able to do within each of the cities. And then we also are supported through other means as well too. So I hope I was able to answer your question. Yeah, so we are a regional office in scope, but we're mainly focused on the collaborative between the 4 cities.
Sure, you work with Mento Schneider then?
Yes, she is a contributing partner to RSTO.
Okay. The $20,000 fee that needs to be paid is this paid one fee for one city, or is it like $20,000 for Kitchener, $20,000 for Waterloo, Cambridge? So it's like $80,000 in the end because there's 4 cities involved?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's a great question. Thank you. It's a $20,000 bid to enter into phase 1.
That's for all 4 cities?
That's for all 4 cities. So I'm standing in front of you representing, hopefully, all 4 cities combined to move forward on that.
Okay. And you indicated in your presentation that we, as an area, the 4 municipalities, appear to have pretty good facilities, etc., for these games, and looks strong potential, and that's why we should be going forward with it. Yet there was the Pan Am Games just last year, and they have, it's a much larger scale, but on the other hand, they had to go to other municipalities around the GTA and area to have some of their events, and we here did not participate in any one event. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe that's correct, that we were not a part of the footprint
So was
for
it
the
because
Pan Am
of distance
Games.
or because we didn't have a facility that we could offer?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not really able to answer that question.
Okay. And I know it's a tough
But
question.
I appreciate it, though.
But similar to that question, seeing that we have the 4 cities here, and I'm just sort of quickly thinking about the 4 cities facilities that we have, and you listed about 20 sporting events that have, and usually when you have an event, you have opening ceremonies and closing ceremonies, and I can't think of a stadium here in the 4 cities to host it. Is that an issue?
Through you, Madam Chair, at the moment it's not. We have the certain technical aspects that we need to meet, so we know what the seating capacity requirements are, the particular load, for instance, for entertainment to come in and rigging, and for a site to be able to be broadcast on a national level. So TSN and RDS are the national level broadcast partners for this event. And we have identified a handful of sites that could work that fit those specifications, whether they be a stadium or an outdoor venue or an indoor venue.
Okay, I think I appreciate that answer. And this event is basically Canada 2021. Are they sort of geared towards having it in the Ontario area for that particular year, or is it wide open for anybody across Canada?
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you very much for asking that question. So the Canada Games operate on about a 20 to 25 year rotation. It's a fixed rotation, and each province only gets it once every 25 years. So Ontario hosted the Games in 1981 in Thunder Bay, in 2001 in London, Ontario, and 2021 is the next scheduled time for Ontario. So really, we're talking about a generational opportunity. This only comes around every 20 to 25 years. So another Ontario city will not have a chance to bid in 2025.
A good answer. Appreciate that. That's good knowledge to know. And final question I have, you showed all the nice, beautiful economic factors and dollars and cents that it provided to the community. But a lot of the communities would have to do improvements to their facilities, maybe put in a new pool or track fields or whatever. And how much debt would they have gotten into that is a negative factor as opposed to a positive factor? With those issues as well?
Maybe that can be a question of staff when we get to the staff report, to staff questions.
Staff will answer that?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just looking at other municipalities back in the history, so I thought you may know that.
Actually, through you, Madam Chair, I will answer the question in this way. It really has been dependent on where those games have been hosted. So, for example, last February in 2015, they were hosted in Prince George, and it was identified that they needed, there was a necessity for economic development and for infrastructure to be created. And it was through, the Northern Gateway Plan that they had and so on. They had means through provincial and federal government to access for that. So every community is different. Some communities already have a robust level of infrastructure that they want to showcase as jewel pieces. And other communities actually see this as an opportunity to leverage some of the plans that they had for future development and speed them up a little bit more. So it's I can't give you a set answer. It's very independent for that particular province or territory that's hosted the games.
Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, I wanted to go along the same line. You show us here all the benefits, but nowhere, there is a cost, and there's nowhere that it's been shown. Do we have any information from Sherbrooke? That was 3 years ago. Do we have any information as to the impact on that community, as to what it might or might not have cost them?
Through you, Madam Chair, I certainly don't mind passing on the economic impact assessment study for the Sherbrooke Games in 2013 to staff, for staff to share to you. What I can speak to is for the last handful of games, they have resulted in a surplus, and the surplus has been anywhere between $1 and $3 million. And the question had come up about legacy, and that money does stay within the community as a legacy piece for sport development to continue on, and for athletes, coaches, organizations to be able to access that in future years.
Yeah, I would appreciate receiving some of those statements that show the surplus that have come to the communities. I'm a little confused on the Regional Sport Tourism Office. Is that an agency of our Regional Tourism Office?
Through you, Madam Chair, the Regional Sport Tourism Office is established as an independent organization that works in partnership with the WRTMC and with Visit Guelph, with the two cities that have DMOs in place. And we also work hand in hand with municipal staff as well too. So in this case, with the City of Kitchener, we work with quite a few staff members from community services as well.
So you're a separate, independent organization?
That is correct.
And where do you get your funding from?
Through you, Madam Chair, as I had stated earlier, we're a main priority under the Regional Tourism Organization 4, and we receive our assistance through them. We work as a project, and then we also receive some partner funding through other agencies as well.
So you receive your money from the region and the City of Guelph, is that right?
Through you, Madam Chair, we do receive them as a contributing partner, correct?
I'm still a little confused.
Mr. Wilmer would like to clarify for you.
So it may be helpful to council to understand that the province funds the RTOs across the province. There are different districts that are larger than any one county or region. So we are within RTO 4, which is largely provincial funded. The Sport Tourism Office is funded through RTO 4 by the province, also by the City of Guelph and the communities of Waterloo Region.
And that's distinct from our tourism operation?
That's correct.
Okay, those are the only questions I have.
Okay. Councillor Marsh?
Thank you. Thank you for coming in and being so patient in answering all our questions. I want to ask you, have you not approached the regional council as well? And if not, why not?
Through you, Madam Chair, we established it as a priority because the Regional Sport Tourism Office is the collaboration of the 4 cities, that it needed to come to the 4 cities first. This is a major project. This is one of the first collaborative projects that the 4 have come together on, and it was very important that we have buy-in and contribution from the 4. Mm-hmm. And once we establish that, as we move forward in the process to the next phase, then we will be approaching the region, because obviously there's some other regional pieces. I mentioned the airport being one of them, sure. And then also the partners like the Grand River Conservation Authority as well too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so should we proceed to through this phase and then be accepted to phase 2 and be the successful bidder? Then do you have some guesstimates as to what the cost will be to the municipality of the City of Kitchener in preparing for the games?
I think
that's a staff question.
Mr. Wilmer's going to make some clarification, but I think part of what the report outlines is that we don't have to move forward to step 2, even if we're accepted, once we get those details. We don't have them now, but we can move forward through this process but not commit ourselves into the next process.
I'm aware of that. Thank you. Yes, Madam Chair, I did read the report. I'm just asking if we have some guesstimate figures so we can anticipate, what the cost to us might be. But is it a premature? Maybe it's an unfair question. Is it premature?
Through you, Madam Chair, it is a bit premature. So as I had mentioned, at the end of June, phase 1 submission will be handed in. And that's, at this moment in time, that's the exercise that we're doing. So we're taking a look at all the sport facilities and non-sport facilities that are required. We're looking at which ones meet the technical specifications best right now.
Yeah.
And if there is gaps, what are the financial gaps that are there? And that's the assessment that we're doing. And that's why we've asked for the opportunity to be able to come back to council so that we can then present that finding at that time.
Perfect.
So
Okay.
as Madam Chair set out, there is that requirement that if we don't put the letter of intent in, we are not able to bid at all. But at any point through this process, if the results of that study come back and it looks like the gap is too great, then we can withdraw ourselves from moving further.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Snyder?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm seeing some great economic impact. Is there any documentation of maybe the impact to the local athletes, like you were saying, with the clinics and all the instruction that comes along with that?
Through you, Madam Chair, I couldn't directly speak to that, but I do believe that if you did look back at the last several areas that have hosted the games, you would see an increase in either athlete participation, in particular for sports that may not necessarily be what we would consider traditional. Because there's the equipment and the coaching knowledge and the official knowledge then left in the community for those participants to come out and actually try the sport. And I think as well, too, it really brings a little bit of a focus of high performance. Again, as I said, these athletes are athletes that are on a pathway in some cases to be our next Olympic heroes. And it's a chance for those local athletes to benefit from those facilities and that knowledge transfer that takes place with the Canada Games.
Is there much time for the athletes in the different provinces to get together and connect?
Through you, Madam Chair, there absolutely is, and that's a very big, vibrant part of the game. So not only do the athletes get a chance to compete within their scope and sphere, but again, it's a multi-sport games, and sometimes athletes go to their national championships and they eat breakfast in the hotel with the same athletes they're competing against. A Canada Games opens up their eyes to sitting potentially beside an athlete who's competing in tennis from Nunavut, who they would never have met in their lifetime. Pin trading is a big thing, so they would exchange pins, they would exchange uniforms. When they're finished competing, they get a chance to go and attend the festival events, and they certainly become the greatest cheerleaders in the stands, and they get a chance to see sports that they may not otherwise see within their own athletic career. So it's very much a supportive environment where they compete, and they have the pride of being an athlete, but then they also have the pride of being some of the greatest ambassadors for those games.
Okay. Can you foresee this, because it's a four-city bid? We can see on your stats here that a city as small as Bathurst of 97,000 was able to host this. Would there be maybe an advantage of benefit to a four-city bid?
Through you, Madam Chair, there absolutely is, and I will point out that this is a bit of a unique. I guess we would be a bit of a best practice moving forward, and I know we have the attention of a few people in the province right now, seeing us move forward, and they think that this is the way of the future. To take on any kind of a sport event of this magnitude involves cost, as the councillors you've all brought up. And I think any time that you can help share some of that costing around the table, it's of great benefit. The fact that we're all in the same neighborhood, and if we can collaborate on a magnificent project like this, what a best practice to put forward. And that's really what we're aiming for with this bid.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Mayor Verbinovic?
Actually, I'm just queued in for comments.
Okay. That's all the questions that we have of... Sorry, of you, Sherry. There's other things happening over here which made me pause, but thank you very much. We are moving now to questions of staff before we get to comments. I know Councillor Yunetsky had a question. I don't know if Mr. Shane, you remember that question and are able to answer it, or if Councillor Yunetsky remembers it. And sorry, I lost it. What's that? Sorry. Give me a minute. It might come back to me. Does anyone else remember? So I think there was a number of questions around costs to cities, and I think it may have been around that.
Through you, Madam Chair, it was, I believe it was in and around infrastructure and the impacts of infrastructure development in other municipalities. As Sherry had indicated, it's very unique to each municipality, each area. For example, PEI came at it with a much different approach from a facility need and development. I don't have exact numbers on those individual impacts of the municipalities for build, but it is definitely very unique to each and how they utilize it from an economic driver as well.
But that's all information that would come back to us or could come back to us if we move on to the next step of the phase, like next phase, next process, right?
That's correct.
Right now we just have to put in that letter of intent to say, yes, we want to look further at it.
That's correct.
Okay. Is there any other questions that people have of staff? Okay. We'll move on to comments then, as everything keeps flickering on me. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
As the mover, you may have the first comment.
I just want to, first of all, thank Sherry for coming in and welcome her to Council Den, because this is what we do here. We like to ask tough questions. Anyways, I'm very pleased to see this here, and when there's significant events that can help animate and can create greater quality of life for our residents, to me it adds enormous value to us. I think this is a tremendous opportunity for our community, but more importantly, we're collaborating within our own region as well as Guelph. So I mean, it gives us an opportunity to showcase our local athletes, but also to showcase how amazing our community is. And I think the economic impacts are pretty significant there. I trust those models. To me, this is just a tremendous add to our community, and I look forward to it, and hopefully we were successful, and thank you for your efforts.
Thank you. Mayor Verbanovic.
Thank you very much, and I too want to thank you for all the work that you've done in bringing this forward to not only the 4 municipal partners, but other partners in the area like the Grand River Conservation Authority and others. I think the reality is we have a lot to showcase in our collective region. So the broader region that takes us out to Guelph and so on. And I think this is an excellent opportunity to do it. It's been some time since we've hosted an event of this caliber in our community, and I think whenever it does, it allows us to both showcase the incredible network of volunteers that we have in the community, the hospitality that this region is known for, as well as provide an excellent opportunity for our athletes. Just last Monday, we had the young athletes who participate on an annual basis in the Children's International Summer and Winter Games come in and do their report. Well, this is an opportunity multiplied many times over and allow young Canadians from across the country to come and interact with young Canadian athletes from our community, and hopefully, put the spark and the dream in their eyes to ultimately go on to bigger and better things, whether that's the Pan Am Games, whether that's the Commonwealth Games, the Olympics, or perhaps professional sport. And I think that's a tremendous thing to do. I like the approach that we're taking to it. I think the last time we bid on the Summer Games, it was just a KW bid, if I remember correctly, and that was back in between 94 and 97, if I remember correctly, because it was former Mayor Zaire that was, as a citizen, I think the chair of that at that time. And I think this is a great initiative that further shows the kind of collaboration we're known for in this part of the province and in this part of the country. So I will be supporting it wholeheartedly.
Thank you, Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am thrilled that this is before us, and I want to thank you for all the work that's gone into this. I believe that we live in one of the greatest regions in the province and in the country. This is a huge opportunity for us, and the fact that we're working together, we get to share the costs and the benefits. I remember the excitement that was generated just from having the Pan Am Torch Run here. People showing up for that. We'll have great volunteer and corporate support. We get to showcase our facilities, our cities, and our people. I think this is just a huge win, and I hope we go along with Guelph and Cambridge and Waterloo and join in supporting this.
Councillor Yunetsky.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a good opportunity to move forward on this particular venture. It looks promising in terms of some of the statistics, yet I do question in terms of the impact on the municipalities that hosted them as to what, how much money they had to put into it, which we don't know yet, but that's the figure that'll be coming. I don't recall ever having in this area an event of this type or magnitude that participated in, and I think this could be an opportunity for this community. So I think that's a good step forward. And I know the predicament if we do support this and then we get more information and statistical data afterwards and we think that maybe we shouldn't move forward, we can withdraw that as an opportunity. Whereby if we do not, at this point in time, support it, then the door is closed. We can't jump in later. It's too far as I've heard on that factor. So at this point in time, I'm prepared to support this because I think there's a good opportunity. I always have this thing in the back of my mind when you have Olympic Games or something like that, and there's a number of cities that bid for it, and you all get involved, and then you see the dollars and cents, and there's costs overruns, and it's 2 times the amount. And I mean, this is much smaller scale, but the principle of that still nags me in the back. But I'm still prepared to support it to see what the dollars and cents will work out in the long run.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Actually, my sentiments are very similar. First, I want to again thank Sherry. I'm willing to bet that you had more questions and answers here than you have at the other councils. But yes, I'm happy to support this at this time. It's not costing Kitchener residents a penny to proceed in the process, and the potential outcome is tremendous. And I also am really happy that we're working with our neighboring municipalities of Waterloo, Cambridge, and the city of Guelph, because I think we should be working close together, and this is a perfect opportunity.
Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks. Thank you, Sherry. It's a combined effort of 4 cities, and I think that's one of the positives about this is making sure that we all work together on something so exciting, because we all know the feeling. I mentioned it before. You know, the Olympics brings our country together. The Pan Am Games. Anytime we have something like that happen, it brings people together. And I think we have a good, broad volunteer base, which hopefully will help move the games further. I've already heard from a sport organizer about the enthusiasm that he has for the possibility of this coming to the community. So I'm certainly willing to support it. Of course, I always have a little caution about what's going to cost, and we all know that that's always the big question. So good luck with the letter of intent, and we'll be waiting for the response.
Those are all the comments that we have other than my own, and I just want to say thank you very much for bringing this forward. I think it's a great opportunity for our cities to work together, but also to move forward in something that could be really exciting for our communities moving forward if we end up being successful. This is step 1 in a long process in which council will get to have a say throughout the process, and I think at the end of the day we have a great community that has hosted significant events in partnership with other municipalities, but also on our own, where we have the volunteer base, we have the energy, we have the ability to put on games like this. I was fortunate enough as a kid to be able to go to the Canada Games, and I can still remember what the opening ceremonies were like for me, and it was an incredible opportunity, you know, not only to get to learn more about our country, but to get to meet people from other parts of our country and to get to play against them and have just a great time with my teammates. So I think being able to move this forward is really encouraging and really exciting to me. So thank you very much for your efforts in bringing this forward, and I will definitely, any way I can help to champion or move this forward, I am right there behind you. So with that, it's been moved by Councillor Ioannidis. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. With that, I don't have any other business on community infrastructure services, so we will adjourn. And reconvene special council.